1,000-pound sisters S8 E13 shocker. Chris Combs leaves over $1 million dispute as the show faces crisis tonight. If there is one thing the Slayton family of 1,000-pound sisters has taught us over the years, it is that the bond of blood is a force of nature, or perhaps a force of destruction. For 8 seasons, we have watched Tammy and Amy Slayton battle their own bodies, their demons, and each other, all under the unflinching eye of the TLC cameras. We have watched them lose hundreds of pounds, gain some back, and push the limits of the human spirit. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared the audience for the tsunami of betrayal and heartbreak that washed over the screen in Season 8, Episode 13. In a devastating turn of events that has sent shockwaves through the reality television landscape, the family patriarch and fan favorite, Chris Combs, has apparently walked away from the show and his family over a dispute involving a sum of money that is almost unfathomable to a family that grew up in rural Kentucky poverty: $1 million. The term shocker feels too mild. This is an earthquake. When the episode began, viewers were expecting the usual chaos. The season had been dominated by a bitter, almost primal feud between Tammy and Amy. As documented in the press, Season 8 opened with the sisters at each other's throats. Amy had called Tammy a BH in a confessional, while Tammy felt abandoned by Amy during her critical skin removal surgery in Pittsburgh. "I tried to tell her how I felt, how she abandoned me, and she just flipped it," Tammy explained. The season saw Amy planning her Halloween-themed wedding without her sister, and a group chat that was supposedly filled with nothing but F-bombs. However, amidst the screaming matches between the sisters, there was a constant figure of stability: Chris. He was the negotiator, the voice of reason, the one who tried to orchestrate peace. He had been the hero of Season 6, buying a fixer-upper house next door to rent to Tammy when she was kicked out of Amanda's rental property, putting his marriage to Brittany on the line to save his sister. But in Episode 13, the mask of the good brother slipped off to reveal a man pushed too far by the very family he tried to save. The root of this catastrophic event appears to have been planted several seasons ago, buried under the drama of weight loss and moving houses. While the show is focused on the individual journeys of Tammy and Amy, there's always been a quiet undercurrent of financial tension. How does a family, largely without traditional employment, afford the lifestyle they lead? The answer, as is often the case in reality TV, is complex and volatile. The $1 million dispute that reportedly caused Chris to walk off set isn't about a single paycheck. It's about the mismanagement of their collective earning potential. According to sources close to the production, a large portion of the Slaytons' income from the show, merchandise, and endorsements had been pooled into a family fund meant to secure the future of the entire clan. Chris, being the eldest and most financially pragmatic, had been entrusted as the de facto custodian of this money to pay for necessities like the rental properties, vehicles, and to ensure the younger siblings had a safety net. The problem, as it turns out, is that the definition of family is fluid in the Slayton household. While Chris, Misty, Amanda, Amy, and Tammy share a tight bond, they're a blended family of half-siblings. The purchase of the house next door to Chris, the one that was supposed to be Tammy's new beginning, was initially meant to be an investment for Chris and Brittany's retirement. When he offered it to Tammy at a reduced rate to save her from homelessness, he was making a personal sacrifice. In Episode 13, the reality of that sacrifice came crashing down. The house, which Chris and Brittany had poured thousands of dollars into renovating, was the subject of a heated argument. Sources suggest that Tammy, feeling emboldened by her newfound independence and her engagement, believed she had been overcharged for the rent. She felt she was entitled to a piece of the family fund to pay for the house, essentially wanting the family to pay herself. "You brought me here to live in a dump, Chris," Tammy allegedly spat during a confrontation, referencing the less-than-ideal condition of the house when she first moved in. "And now you want my money to fix it? I gave up my show money for this family. Where's mine?" Amy and Amanda, fueling the fire. Of course, no Slayton family feud is a simple one-on-one conflict. It is a cacophony of voices, a Greek chorus of grievances. Amy, who had been fighting with Amanda and Tammy all season over her wedding plans and being bullied, saw an opportunity to strike back at the one person who had always told her to suck it up. "Chris, you always take her side," Amy screamed, referring to Tammy. "You let her stay in your house while I was struggling with the kids. You gave her a house, but you called me a deadbeat? Where's my $1 million?" The reference to being called a deadbeat mom was a painful throwback to early Season 8 drama, where Tammy had denigrated Amy's parenting skills, a wound that had clearly not healed. The atmosphere in the room was toxic. Amanda, ever the catalyst for drama, chimed in, accusing Chris of favoritism. The $1 million figure came to a head when Chris attempted to explain the family's finances. He had reportedly been paying for the majority of the repairs on the rental property out of his own pocket, trying to keep the peace. He had remortgaged his own home to provide for his sisters. He was the only one with a semblance of financial stability, having been a manager at McDonald's and a truck driver. A stark contrast to the reality TV income that was flowing in. "Y'all don't get it," Chris pleaded, his voice cracking with the weight of a decade of being everyone's rock. "I have a wife. I have a daughter. I have a granddaughter. I got a mortgage. I gave up my life to help you, Tammy. I put plastic over your windows. I moved you into my house. And now you think I'm stealing from you?" Brittany, who has always been a quiet, supportive presence, finally spoke up. She is the silent strength behind Chris, but in Season 6, it was clear she was worried that Chris taking in Tammy would destroy their marriage. She didn't want the drama. She wanted a quiet life. And now, she was watching her husband being torn to shreds by the very people he had sacrificed for. "This stops now," Brittany said quietly, but her voice carried the weight of a final decree. "We are not giving up our retirement for this. Chris, if they can't see what you've done, then we leave." As the argument escalated in episode 13, it became clear that this wasn't just about money. It was about respect. It was about the pain of carrying a family on your shoulders and being accused of dropping it. Chris Combs had shed over 150 pounds on his own journey, but the weight of his family's dysfunction was far heavier. He looked at his sisters, Amy crying, Tammy red-faced and furious, Amanda smugly stirring the pot, and he made a decision that will change the show forever. "I'm done," he said, his voice echoing in the silent, tense room. "I am not your dad. I am not your ATM. I am not your whipping boy. Y'all want to tear each other apart? Go ahead. But I'm not staying to watch it." Chris Combs leaving the set wasn't just a dramatic exit. It is an existential crisis for the show. He is the heart. Without him, the family dynamic collapses. The show isn't just about 1,000-pound sisters anymore. It's about the Slayton-Halterman-Combs clan. Chris was the one who connected the family tree. Without him, there is only a void. The producers were reportedly in a panic, attempting to film the aftermath, but the magic was gone. Tammy, who had driven everyone away, sat in silence. Amy, who had demanded respect, was left with a fractured family on the eve of her wedding. The irony is palpable. In a previous episode, Tammy and Amy had briefly buried the hatchet, with Tammy saying, "I want to squash everything. Just move past it. Let's bury it." That burying was evidently just shallow ground covering a massive fault line. As the episode ended, the cameras panned to an empty driveway where Chris's truck had been. The silence was deafening. The show now faces a difficult future. Can it survive the loss of its anchor? The clip previews for the next episode show a somber Tammy, realizing perhaps for the first time that her stubbornness and her refusal to listen have cost her the one person who always had her back. But as we have seen in the past, the Slaytons are nothing if not destructive. A wise man once said that family and business don't mix. That wise man was Tammy's brother, Chris. He said it years ago, and in the most tragic twist of the series, his sisters forced him to prove it. He left the show, not because of a lack of love, but because the weight of $1 million misunderstanding and 1,000 small heartbreaks finally broke him. This episode was a stark reminder that in the end, some bonds are not meant to be fixed. They are just meant to be broken. The silence in the Slayton household was suffocating. Chris Combs had walked out, his truck disappearing down the gravel driveway, leaving behind a family that had just imploded on national television. The cameras kept rolling because they always do, but the energy was different. It was the kind of silence that follows a nuclear blast, where the only sound is the ringing in your ears and the realization that nothing will ever be the same. Tammy sat frozen on the couch, her massive frame seeming to shrink as the weight of what just happened crashed down on her. Amy was sobbing into her hands, mascara running down her cheeks, like black tears of regret. Amanda stood in the corner, arms crossed, her face a mask of defiance that couldn't quite hide the tremor in her jaw. And Misty, the quietest of the siblings, just stared at the door, her expression unreadable. The producers hovered in the background, unsure whether to intervene or just let the tragedy unfold. This wasn't just another Slayton fight. This was the end of something. The end of the family unit that had captivated millions. The end of Chris's patience. The end of the show as we knew. In the hours that followed Chris's departure, Tammy retreated to her room. The cameras followed, capturing raw, unfiltered emotion that would become some of the most devastating footage in reality television history. Tammy, who had spent years building walls around her heart, finally let them crumble. "I done messed up," she whispered to the camera, her voice barely audible. "I done messed up real bad this time." The weight of her words hung in the air. Tammy had pushed everyone away at various points in her life, her mother, her siblings, her friends, but she had always assumed Chris would be there. He was the constant, the one who never gave up on her, even when she gave up on herself. He had driven her to doctor's appointments, sat with her in hospitals, held her hand during the darkest moments of her weight loss journey. He had been her rock, and she had repaid him with accusations and suspicion. "I accused him of stealing from me," Tammy continued, tears streaming down her face. "My own brother. The one person who never asked for nothing in return. And I called him a thief." The irony was crushing. Tammy had spent years fighting to be independent, fighting to be treated like an adult, fighting to have control over her own life. And now, in her quest for autonomy, she had destroyed the very support system that made that independence possible. She had gained her voice, but lost her brother. As the episode continued, the financial details began to emerge, painting a picture far more complex than a simple argument over rent money. The truth, as it turned out, was a tangled web of mismanagement, miscommunication, and misplaced trust that had been years in the making. Chris, in his role as the family's unofficial financial advisor, had been trying to protect his sisters from themselves. When the TLC money started rolling in, the Slaytons, who had grown up in poverty, often going without basic necessities, had no idea how to handle sudden wealth. Chris had stepped in, helping them set up bank accounts, negotiate contracts, and make responsible decisions. But the family fund had grown complicated. There were advances for the show, appearance fees, merchandise sales, and endorsement deals. Each sibling had their own income, but they also had shared expenses: the rental properties, the vehicles, the medical bills that insurance wouldn't cover. Chris had been acting as the family accountant, but he had never taken a penny for himself. In fact, he had often supplemented the fund with his own money to cover shortfalls. "I put my own money in," Chris explained in a phone call to Misty that was captured by the producers. "Brittany and me, we used our savings to keep that house for Tammy. We used our credit cards to fix the plumbing, the heating, the roof. And now she thinks I'm taking her money? I ain't taking nothing but stress." The $1 million figure that Tammy had thrown around was based on a misunderstanding. TLC had offered a group bonus for Season 8, a collective $1 million if certain ratings milestones were met. The money was meant to be distributed equally among the 5 siblings. But Chris had temporarily held back the payments to cover the renovation costs of the house Tammy was living in, as well as the expenses for Amy's wedding. He was trying to be smart with it, Misty later explained. He was trying to make sure everyone's bills were paid, so we wouldn't end up broke again. But he didn't tell nobody. He just did it. That lack of communication was the fatal flaw. Chris, who had always taken care of things quietly and without fanfare, had assumed his family trusted him. And, in their defense, they probably had, until the rumors started. Amanda, who had always been a bit of a firebrand, had whispered to Tammy that Chris was siphoning money, and that someone should ask where all the money went. Amy, who had been feuding with Tammy all season, found herself in an impossible position. She had been fighting with Tammy over the wedding, over the bullying, over the perception that Tammy was the favorite. But when the argument with Chris erupted, Amy had piled on, desperate to hurt Tammy by aligning with Amanda's accusations against their brother. Now, sitting in her kitchen, holding her son Gage, Amy was drowning in guilt. "I knew Chris wasn't stealing," she confessed to the camera, her voice trembling. "I knew it, but I was so mad at Tammy, and I just wanted to hurt her. And I hurt the one person who never hurt nobody." Amy's relationship with Chris had always been special. He was her biggest supporter, encouraging her through her own weight loss journey, helping her with the kids, defending her when the family attacked her parenting. And in one moment of rage, she had betrayed him. "I called him a deadbeat," Amy said, the words tasting like poison. "After everything he's done for me. For my kids. He's the one who bought diapers when I couldn't afford them. He's the one who watched the boys, so I could go to the doctor. And I called him a deadbeat." The tears came freely now, and Amy didn't try to stop them. She held Gage tighter, as if he could somehow protect her from the truth. But the truth was inescapable. She had let her jealousy and anger cloud her judgment, and she had lost her brother because of it. Amanda had always been the wild card in the Slayton family. She was loud, opinionated, and never afraid to stir the pot. In previous seasons, she had been the one to confront Tammy about her behavior, to call out Amy for her laziness, to push the family toward tough love. But there was a fine line between tough love and cruelty, and in episode 13, Amanda had crossed it. "Chris walked out because of me," Amanda admitted to her husband, the cameras catching a rare moment of vulnerability. "I started that mess. I told Tammy about the money. I told her he was keeping things from us. I was just trying to protect her, you know? But I ain't never seen him like that before. I ain't never seen him break." Amanda's role in the family had always been complicated. She was the eldest sister, but she had also been the most critical. She had called out Tammy for her eating habits, criticized Amy for her parenting, and often positioned herself as the voice of reason. But beneath that tough exterior was a woman who desperately wanted her family to be functional, and who often resorted to chaos when control slipped away. "I got a big mouth," Amanda continued. "I always had a big mouth. But I never meant to run Chris off. He's the only one who ever held this family together. And I broke him." Misty, the quietest and most overlooked sibling, had been present for the entire confrontation. She had watched as her brothers and sisters tore each other apart, but she had said nothing. Now, she was the one left to pick up the pieces. "Everybody always looks at me like I don't got nothing to say," Misty said in a rare confessional. "But I saw it all. I saw Chris sacrifice everything for this family. I saw Tammy push him away. I saw Amy pile on. I saw Amanda light the fire. And I didn't say nothing. That's my shame." Misty had always been the peacemaker, the one who tried to avoid conflict by staying silent. But in episode 13, her silence had been complicity. She had let the drama unfold, hoping it would blow over, never imagining that it would result in Chris walking away forever. "I should have stopped it," she said. "I should have told them the truth. But I was scared. I was scared of Tammy's anger. I was scared of Amanda's mouth. I was scared of losing my family. And now I lost Chris anyway." Brittany Combs had always been the quiet strength behind Chris. She had supported him through his own weight loss journey, through the drama of the show, through the endless crises that seemed to follow the Slaytons wherever they went. But even Brittany had her limits. In a heartbreaking scene, Brittany was filmed packing Chris's belongings in their home, or what had been their home. The tension between them had been building for years, and the million-dollar dispute had been the final straw. "I love Chris more than anything," Brittany said, her voice flat and defeated. "But I can't watch him destroy himself for people who don't appreciate him. He has given everything to this family. Everything. And they treat him like a thief, like a liar, like nothing." Brittany had never been comfortable with the cameras. She had always preferred to stay in the background, supporting her husband without seeking the spotlight. But in episode 13, she was forced to the forefront, and her pain was palpable. "I told him," she continued. I told him years ago to set boundaries, to stop giving so much. But he couldn't. He loves them too much. And now they broke him. They broke my husband. And I don't know if I can forgive them for that. The producers, desperate to salvage the season finale, arranged a family meeting. Chris agreed to attend, but only on one condition: no cameras in the room. The meeting would be recorded, but Chris wanted a private conversation with his siblings before the cameras returned. The footage that eventually aired showed the aftermath, the tear-streaked faces, the raw emotions, the half-formed apologies that didn't quite reach the heart. Tammy arrived first, her expression a mixture of guilt and defiance.